measures, and we had a resource of providers who were able to deliver those services. Being devil's advocate, are they the best? Maybe, maybe not. We talk about the inconsistency across literature, and they talk about the ADOS or maybe other measures that could be lend itself to better information, but we don't have the provider pool to be able to render these. To their developmental age as opposed to developmental and chronological age. Are they matching up? The other thing to point out is our diagnostic measures. Again, specialty fields, developmental pediatrics is a limited resource. There are limited providers out there, and we have inconsistent use of the diagnostic tools. Well baby visits, they use the MCHAT, standard measures through all pediatric appointments, but the specialists are inconsistent also in their usage, whether they're doing the ADOS or not. So we have a lot of variability here, and hopefully going forward, we're looking for information on how do we diagnose our kids as early as possible and get them the right services when they need them most. And we'll come back to this question at the bottom to the group here is, are there other measures we should or could be using? Again, keeping in mind the provider pool and the accessibility to all of our beneficiaries. I'm going to go through this slide quickly. We have several initiatives that are going on within the Autism Care Demonstration and the Defense Health Agency. We have a significant engagement with our stakeholders, whether it's ADA providers, advocates, lobbyists, internal and external, so like the developmental pediatricians within our military health system. Lots of engagement to provide us good information resources, even research, up-and-coming research. One of the other ways we communicate, and I'll highlight because I want to give you the email address, is our ACD mailbox. This is for program policy questions that providers, stakeholders, anyone interested who can reach out to us and ask us any questions. I'm going to share that email address because I think if you all have ideas after today or we don't get a chance to go over them, I'd love to hear from you. The address is really easy. It's DHA, so Defense Health Agency, .ACD, Autism Care Demonstration, @mail.mil. I'll say it again, DHA.ACD, @mail.mil. It's a great way to communicate to several people at the Defense Health Agency, so we monitor that daily. Other activities, MIL, M-I-L, MAIL.mil, as in military, yes ma'am. DHA.ACD@mail.mil. Thanks, sir. Two other activities that we have on this slide. We have quality audits that are, we have contracted out an external reviewer to look at what's going on in our quality metrics. That's an evolving topic for us because well, I'll talk about quality in a second here, but that's a huge effort on our part to ensure that we're providing quality care. And the last thing, on this slide, in 2017, we hosted an industry day to really solicit best practices and ways of delivering the most efficient services, again, moving us closer towards that medical benefit. Spend a little bit of time here. The direct care has 4 locations now where we're providing some sort of resource on a military installation, so at the hospital. And I'll point out that Fort Belvoir Community Hospital here in Fort Belvoir, Virginia, and then Walter Reed National Military Medical Center up in Bethesda. I'm sorry. Those both have programs that are engaging with parents directly, exposing them to the resources, the services, the availability, not only within the military healthcare system, but their local resources, connecting with schools, connecting with Medicaid services. So we really are trying to leverage this passing on of knowledge. I'm sure everybody here has had an experience or knows somebody who, receiving the diagnosis is very tough on that family in those first few, for quite some time, but especially those first few days, and it's overwhelming information. We're trying to provide a resource where we can disseminate and put out in contact with all of what we have available. Joint Base Lewis McChord at the Madigan Army Medical Center offers a multidisciplinary clinic where they do a lot of the in-house assessment. We're trying to figure out how to replicate that military-wide. And then Wright-Patterson Air Force Base has the PLAY project. I think it's Play and Language for Autistic Youngsters project. And that's a parent-mediated program based out of Ohio. I think Dr. Stoppelman is the lead on that concept. But Wright-Patterson Air Force Base has taken the initiative to do these parent-mediated programs as a supplement or possibly an alternative to some of the ABA services. The next on here, I'm going to go to those slides because they're important to us. The Department of Defense Office of Inspector General did 2 audits, the North and the South regions. I won't spend much detail on this unless you're really interested, but essentially we found that based on medical records documentation, that 2/3 of our reimbursed services were inappropriately paid. And that's basically because there was either no documentation, insufficient documentation, or absent, or inappropriate, so copy and paste. We find that we're trying to move these providers from an educational to a medical benefit, and so they're learning some of the ropes of how to provide medical care, to include how to write a medical record. The links to these are they're publicly available, so if you're interested, feel free to download that information. But the last thing that I want to spend time talking about is the most exciting part for us is the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program, and Nicole Williams is our POC for that, so thanks, Nicole. But the study was awarded in the fall of last year to the University of Rochester, and the abstract is available at that link. But really, for us, we see this as the potential to be an incredible study looking at comparing standard of care, so early intensive behavioral intervention with an adaptive model, so an hour bifurcation here. And they're really looking to address 4 key questions. Do kids improve as well as or better, right, for the adaptive model? What's really the impact on the families of this adaptive model? Can we predict any of this information? Are there any predictive factors that we can glean from these kinds of types of delivery? And then ultimately, what helps or hinders a company from providing these types of services? So hopefully they'll be able to answer those questions. The next slide, I think, is what's most important to the community at large. 5 items that we're hoping to identify. The first is, how does it compare, and how can we give families more choice? That would be a huge contribution, I think, to the field. The second one is, knowing that ABA works well, it can provide us more justification. If we can get to those clinically meaningful outcomes, like Captain Simmer said, obviously this is not an RCT, but we're moving closer with a larger sample size. I think the anticipated, or the projected N size is 130, which I think for any one study is pretty large when it comes to autism research. The next one is for family selection. What works best for the family? This is intensive on the family. People go into these families' homes and spend lots of time. Can we do this more efficiently? The last one, or the number 4, is can we provide services at a lower cost? Like we said, we have 263 or 68 million annually right now. Can we provide better, more effective care at a lower cost? Not reducing reimbursement rates, but can we get to a more meaningful outcome from a different model? And then lastly, I think not only for TRICARE, but I think this will provide information to all funding sources on ABA services. So we have great hopes. It's a 5-year study. There'll be annual reports, and at the end, obviously, we're anticipating some sort of a published, hopefully a peer-reviewed journal to talk about this 5-year study. Captain Zimmer?
All right, so the last thing that we wanted to cover before we give you some questions is a little bit about where we're hoping to go next with the autism care demonstration. And let me just say up front that I'm responsible for all medical and TRICARE, so although autism is probably the single program I spend the most time on, it succeeds because we have 2 really outstanding people. Chris is one. We also have Miss Amy Hines down in San Antonio, but all these kids get their care because of their work. So I just want to really shout them out and say what a great job they do and recognize them. So this is where they're taking us next. This is what we want to do next. So we want to have a truly comprehensive benefit. If you read the autism care demonstration, and you can go to the TRICARE manual, we have 5,000 pages that tell you what TRICARE does online. If anybody's really bored, go read them. But we actually have, we actually use those. And in there, if you go to the TRICARE operations manual, you'll see in chapter 18, there is a section on the autism care demonstration. And right now, it is very focused on applied behavior analysis, and it's very provider focused. How do we take care of the providers? That needs to change. TRICARE is a beneficiary and family focused program, and service member, right? We talked about that. So the autism care demonstration needs to become a beneficiary and family focused program. That's where we're going next. And you're going to see some very dramatic changes, I think, to the autism care demonstration between now and July. That's really our goal to get all these changes published and announced. And the biggest thing there is going to be a much larger parental and family component. You know, we cover parent training right now. Less than half of our families actually receive it. That really bothers me. That's a failure on our part. We're going to change that. So we're going to make parent and family support because we know what is the #1 evidence-based intervention for children with autism? Taking care of the family, taking care of the parents. We need to do a better job of that. We're going to do that. We're going to expand the benefits that parents have available, the services that parents have available, and we're going to incentivize their use. And we're going to go to the providers that aren't doing it and say, why not? And we're going to hold them accountable for that. We're going to have a more holistic beneficiary-centered approach. What are we providing for the beneficiary? So it's not just going to be ABA anymore. I mentioned that that's the #3 thing that parents found helpful. So we're going to incorporate occupational therapy, speech and language therapy, all the other things that are evidence-based that help children with autism. We want to bring that into one program, not 2 bifurcated sites like we have today, and really make it so we have treatment teams everywhere, treatment team meetings, and require a single team to be working with that child for the child's benefit and the family's benefit. That's going to be changed for us. We're going to expand respite care. So we know these families do well when they have respite care. So we want to expand that benefit. We want to see if there's a way that we can legally offer that to our retiree families, not just our active duty families. We're working on that with our, there are always statutory issues, but as Admiral Bono has told us many times, our director, tell me what's right, and then we'll figure out how to get there. So that's what we're going to do here. Case management, care coordination, we really want to beef that up and make sure, again, that we're looking at the child as the focus, and that everything's coming in to make that child, help that child reach their maximum potential, and that everything's focused on the child and not on the provider. Utilization management, I mentioned that already, right? We got some kids that get 5 hours of ABA, and some kids get 40 hours a week. We have no evidence that their outcome is different. The CDMRP space is hopefully going to help us get to some of that, but we can do some of that now, too. That's why we have some outcome measures. One of the questions you're going to see on the next slide is, what do you recommend we start measuring so that we can identify and target the right services to the right child? Maybe this child's going to do better with occupational therapy, then let's do that. And this child will do better with ABA, then let's do that. Or some combination. We need a better way to manage the utilization in such a way that it serves the child and the family. Quality oversight. We're going to have a big focus on that. One of the things we're doing on a large scale in TRICARE is moving to value-based care. That's not just in autism, that's in lots of things we do. We have a number of value-based care initiatives, and we're focused not only on incentivizing providers, but also incentivizing patients, encouraging them to use the highest value care. And that's going to get built into this care demonstration. And we're going to identify the things that are the most needed for that child, and then set up the financials and some of the non-financial incentives too, so that we can ensure those children get the best thing for them. So, questions that we'd like to ask you. One, if you are aware of any research or any data that would help us with that utilization management piece, what's the dose response? How can we identify? Because we know autism spectrum disorder is not one illness, right? It's a variety of different things that all kind of fall into the same thing in DSM-5 and the ICD, because it's very simple. Right now, the description is really symptomatic, not based necessarily on the underlying etiology. What other outcome measures can we use? Because we definitely want to measure the outcomes. We want the treatment plans to match the outcome. And if we're not getting the outcomes we should be, then the treatment plan needs to change. We need to hold those providers accountable to make that happen. And we have the authority to do that from Congress. But we need good science to base that off. And finally, what are maximum necessity criteria? You'll notice these questions all kind of interrelate. We want to be able to look at the science and use that science to develop treatment plans for these children that will help them reach their maximum potential, help their families adjust the best way possible to having a child with autism. So that we are using, we put a lot of money into this program, and that's great if it's helping the children. We don't mind spending the money if it helps the children, but let's make sure we're making the best use of the resources that we're expending, and that, again, that we're using the most recent science and evidence that we can to get to where we need to go. So with that, we're going to open it up to discussion.
Thank you very much, John and Jerry and William. Go, John.
Thank you for your presentation, for efforts of care. I would like to suggest that for many people in the autism community, the first priority is actually something you did not even mention here, and that is identifying and treating other serious medical problems that accompany autism. We have had many meetings and discussions here at IAC about how, in the case of children, intestinal pain, various other causes of pain are the root cause of serious behavioral problems, and for many with autism, those are unidentified and untreated. Epilepsy is probably a major cause of death for autistic people, and that wasn't mentioned. So I would suggest then, with all due respect, that that's a fundamentally different priority that might well be incorporated into what you're doing. The next thing that I would question is, you talked about occupational therapy and speech pathology, or speech therapy, as being the two first things. ABA is the third, and then the whole presentation was about ABA. And here at IAC, we have sat year after year, and we have watched billions of dollars be invested in autism research. And from some of those billions, we have evolved new therapies. And I think many people would say that ABA is more than 50 years old. It is like the sulfa drug of autism treatment. There are many other things. And it concerns me that you didn't mention trying that. And I see a risk that we're going to be trapped with one treatment for autism that TRICARE covers, and that's ABA. And I would very much hope that that does not happen. And the final thing that I would ask you all to consider in evaluating ABA, speech and occupational therapy, too many of the studies that evaluate those things are based on parent report and clinician report. And we've now been seeing, we've got 20, 30 years of all those things being administered in big numbers to autistic children. And the autistic children who receive, in particular ABA, often when they are adults, they have strikingly different opinions about the value of those services than their parents did.
Sure.
And I would urge you to look at that when evaluating what we should do.
Okay, well, great comments. And let me tell you, I agree with all three of your points, first of all. So, absolutely, we are in fact, we're looking, and maybe should put this on the slide. One of the things that we're very concerned about is eating disorders in children with autism. How are we building out the treatment plan? Certainly, a third of children with autism have seizures. In fact, we have some requirements that the community doesn't like, I will add, that all of our autism providers have to have CPR BLS training. Why? Because these children have medical complaints. They have things like seizures where you might need that training. It's amazing the number of folks in the community that aren't real happy with us for that, but we have that requirement. But absolutely, as I mentioned, we have very comprehensive medical benefits. Those things will be addressed, but I appreciate your feedback, and I think that's good feedback for us. We will look to make sure that we're incorporating all those medical issues, not just the things we talked about, as we rewrite the autism care demonstration. So completely agree with you on that point. So I think in regards to the medical issues, absolutely yes. And I tried to get to this, and if I didn't very effectively, I apologize. You're right. This is an ABA-focused program today. ABA has its place, and I think it's an important component of a treatment plan. It's one component. There need to be many others. And that's what I was trying to say here is that what you're going to see over the next 6 months is this is not going to be an ABA-focused program anymore. It has been in the past, and that has not been to our benefit. So that's why we're going to build in the OT, the speech therapy, and other things, children's play therapy that's now testing out at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, or some of the things that we're doing at Madigan out in Seattle, or we're going to have an Exia Summit with our direct care providers. So we're testing out some of these new and innovative things to bring them in, and let's see if we can expand those things across the entire MHS so that all of our children can benefit from them. So completely agree with you on that point, and we are absolutely wanting to make this again, ABA has a place. We're not going to eliminate ABA, but we are going to make this a more holistic program and not only focused on that. So completely agree. And actually, you want to take the third one?
Sure. I think the comment about parent and clinician-based feedback, that's absolutely one of the issues we're trying to take as just one component, because when we talk about outcomes, like I said, the three that are on there are provider and parent surveys. We want to go beyond that. We want to go beyond what's self-report, essentially. And I think that's a critical component of moving forward, and also getting us to include other evidence-based services that are out there. We know there are a whole host out there, but like Captain Zimmer said, we've been driven, external forces have driven us to focus predominantly on ABA services, and we think we're finally at a good enough place where that's settled. Let's evolve. Let's keep growing. Let's provide what the child actually needs. Because long term, we want them, like Captain Zimmer said, to be the most well-functioning individual and possibly contributor to society, right? So I think that we want to keep evolving and keep growing and moving in that direction.
Dr. Dawson.
So first of all, I'm thrilled about your new program that you're developing that is looking at the efficacy of early intervention and the new program out of Rochester. I just think that's fantastic. And I actually recall being at the Senate hearing around TRICARE benefit and testifying at that, and having Kristen Gillibrand suggest that the review that apparently now has been done be conducted to understand the evidence base. So it's interesting to see how it's evolved. Just have a few comments. One is, and this was other people had mentioned this to me, so I'm saying it also on behalf of others, which is that I think it's important to keep in mind that ABA is a very broad term. Sometimes people think of ABA as discrete trial training or discrete trial teaching, but ABA actually encompasses a very broad range of evidence-based treatments, including the play-based and naturalistic types of developmental behavioral interventions that are now being used in many cases. The other thing I wanted to say is that although I completely agree the evidence base needs to be stronger, should be stronger, I guess I respectfully disagree that it's quite as weak as perhaps it was portrayed. That I do think there have been very high-quality randomized clinical trials, and that those trials have shown meaningful outcomes. So, for example, I'm aware of one very well a randomized clinical trial where the outcomes were IQ, language ability, adaptive behavior. Children were followed for 2 years afterwards after having received 2 years of intervention, and the gains were sustained for 2 years. And again, cognitive, language, adaptive behavior, symptoms all continued to show benefit, as well as analyses of the cost benefit. So even people on this committee tracked the services that children who received 2 years of intensive intervention, meaning, by the way, 15 hours, so it's not 40 hours a week for 2 years, that after that they required fewer services, and the cost savings was estimated to be about $19,000 a year after having received the 2 years of intervention, and it was estimated by age 10 that the costs were fully recouped because fewer services were required. The other thing is just to say that NIH has funded a number of studies that will be coming out in the next year or two. There's a study in PRESS, which is a multi-site randomized clinical trial of intensive early intervention, which I will just say that there was benefit found in meaningful outcomes, and I won't disclose too much because it'll be coming out soon. As well as there is a study funded by NIH that is I think close to being done, where they're comparing more play-based versus traditional types of ABA interventions at 2 dose levels, so that we can start to get some information about dose. Thank you.
Sure. I very much appreciate those the comments and the feedback. I agree that there are, for our review, picture here that we struggle with.
Just one more quick comment. I do remember at the time that I was working on this more actively in an advocacy role, Tom Insold made a comment to me as we were walking in to talk to some of the people who make the decisions around insurance, and he said, it's always amazing how mental health benefits require a higher standard. So, for example, has there ever been a randomized clinical trial of speech therapy? And so I'm just saying that there is six trials, so the outcomes were a little different. I think that the standard, for some reason, for these kinds of benefits is higher, and I just think it's unfortunate because a lot of people are waiting while we require these incredibly high standards.
I'd say two things. If I could, one, we're always looking for new studies. I think we've probably seen the ones you referred to, but if you could send us the references, that would be great. We'd appreciate that. So if you could use at dha.hcd@mail.mil, and we'd love to communicate with you some more. I think that would be really helpful, so I would ask you to do that. I will tell you that we do apply the same standards to the hierarchy of evidence standards we mentioned, do apply to everything that we do. And I am aware of some randomized control studies for speech and language therapy where some children, and adults, but mostly children, got it, some didn't, and they compared the results. So yes, there are some studies like that. I can't cite them off the top of my head, but I know they're out there. And I think we are pretty good about using the same standards. I mentioned we actually use a slightly lower, I don't want to say lower, a slightly different standard for pediatric studies because we know that the same level of evidence doesn't always exist for pediatrics with adults. That doesn't mean that the treatment's not helpful. So I think if anything, we do have a slightly different, and I certainly would not say higher standard for pediatric research than for adult. It's just a little bit different.
One comment I wanted to, sorry, I'll be quick, I promise. The comment about the number of hours is interesting for us right now, and this is why we're looking for medical necessity criteria, is that these providers in the community make these recommendations, and that's essentially what we go on. So there is nothing out there for us to go back and say, really, why did you decide 40 hours and then billing us for 10? If you thought 40 was medically necessary, we need to figure out a way to get 40 to get our child to the, the logic to me is that if you're under providing what your recommendation is, it's just like any other service, right? If I have my Z-Pack of, because I'm ill in some way, and I take 5 out of the 7 pills, well, I haven't done the dose response, right? Now that's a little bit different because we know some of that information, but these recommendations, we're trying to move so we can make better decisions on what is the right amount of care for our kids, and we just don't.
Replicate the earlier findings. So I think we continue this dialogue with Hope over time. In fact, I already sent off an email to Anne, who runs the NIH-wide research program, to ask, well, what do we have in this area, and to send that information to you. So we'll engage in that dialogue going forward. I want to give Dr. Reichart a chance for the last question or comment before we move again on. Sorry, can you the mic?
I enjoyed and appreciated your presentation. I think one comment I have for you to consider is that in terms of analyzing future risk, actually genetics is one of the best prognosticators about what else might happen to something that you might consider incorporating this, which is now quite low cost and would probably provide some comfort to the families. Knowledge is always helpful for families. Some incentives to persuade your families to participate more widely in autism scientific research, which again may be a future benefit. I mean, there are a lot of new drugs that I think are on the horizon for improving cognition and so on, and particularly knowing as much about these people, their characteristics, IQ, genetics, and so on, that may be very important in determining who's most appropriate for inclusion in such trials. Thank you.
I'm afraid we're going to have to move on. Susan has some announcements before our break.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank TRICARE for the presentation.
So I have a very important and happy announcement. Sam Crane sends her greetings, and she wanted me to announce to you that her baby arrived today. So she has a good excuse for missing the meeting, but she said she's sorry she can't be here, but she's well occupied and doing well. I also wanted to welcome Nicole Williams and Rob Ring. I didn't get a chance to do that earlier. Wanted to mention that Marcy Ronyak and Tiffany Farchione are not able to be here because of the absence of federal appropriations for their agencies. They wanted you to know that they are not just missing the meeting for other reasons. And we will have a photo of the committee during this break because we have a number of new members and want to update our website. So if members would please step to the side here, we'll get that done as soon as possible. And then we'll come back. Josh, what time would you like?
I think we should be back at 11:10. So we're going to get started again. We want to make sure to use the full amount of time for committee business that we need. So the next on our agenda is committee business. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Dr. Daniels to proceed. Before I do that, I just want to mention that I have an obligation during the lunch hour over on main campus. So I'm going to be leaving a few minutes early from the business session, and I will be back hopefully not too many minutes late into the public comment session, but I'll be hopefully back here by 1:15 at the latest. During that time, of course, Susan will chair the session.
Thank you. So we'll move on to IACC committee business. Just to start off, thank you to the OARC staff again for all the work that they put into preparing for this meeting and preparing the many publications and projects that you're going to see presented here. In particular, this time we're going to be talking about the IACC ASD Research Portfolio Analysis Report, and thank you to all of them for all their work on this. So first I wanted to talk about a new option that the IACC has for submitting public comments. Last time we had a discussion about public comments and particularly about remote public comments. So just to review, since 2008, the IACC has had two methods for public comment. One is written comments, which are a form of remote public comments that can be submitted in advance and can be sent from anyone around the country, around the world. We also have oral public comments that are presented in person at the meetings. And that these two methods are used by the vast majority of federal advisory committees across the government. And there are, on the GSA website, they say over 1,000 federal advisory committees. We looked at a sampling of these federal advisory committees and did find that they use these traditional methods of public comment. So we wanted to explore whether we could offer a different, an additional